Hello there and welcome to another Why You Lost. This one, the Vampire Counts versus the High Elves. This replay was sent to me by Fishbox, so thanks to him for the replay. Let's have a look and see where he went wrong. Playing as the Vampire Counts against the High Elves. Got a good bit of space on this map. Tarantula Coast South. Got some Vanguard shenanigans going on over here, but we'll come back to that in a second. Let's have a look at his army and see what he's brought along. So we got 3 units of zombies. Always good for tying stuff up. We got skeleton spears, skeleton warriors, some graveguard great weapons, some regular graveguard, 2 of those, more skeletons, more skeleton spears, and a mortis engine taking up the rear. So a lot of different units. He's led by good old Vlad von Karstein, a tough lord but lacking in the maneuverability. He's got Master of Beguilement, got most of his abilities. He's got Curse of Years as a spell, not sure he needs that. Got Raise Dead and Invocation, those 2, the essentials. And doesn't look, he's got the hunger, so he's got regeneration, but I don't think he has Blood Drinker. So he doesn't have the Blood Drinker item, which is what gives Vlad his mad regeneration. So perhaps missing a trick there, because that really helps keep Vlad alive. Also got a Vargolf over on one side, and some Blood Knights. And of course, those Hex Wraiths vanguarded up here in the forest with these Illyrian Reavers. So a lot of different units in the army, which gives himself more to micro. So it can make life harder when you bring so many different kinds of units. His opponent is the High Elves, also quite new at the game, judging by the formation. Lots of straight lines, asking for Winds of Death if he had them. Got 4 units of archers up front at the moment. 3 units of spears, 2 white lions. Got a chariot out there as well. Imric on Menaithnir, so going big on the Lord. Also got a Mage of Heavens. Should have probably gone with fire against the Vampire Counts. Got an Eagle as well. And then those 2 Illyrian Reavers in the forest, which have now clocked the Vanguard deployed Hex Wraiths and are getting on those. So he should have pulled away from this fight. He's outnumbered 2-1 there. Unless he got a good charge in, it probably wouldn't be worth sticking around there. But he's going to start to move his army up. And in case of zombies, if you bring zombies, you really want to put them out in front of the rest of your army because they're so slow, only 23 speed. Even skeletons and graveguard are both faster than them. So they're going to catch up and overtake them really quick when really you want zombies to be at the front soaking up all the damage. So good to put them way ahead, a good distance apart like this. And then by the time, hopefully, by the time you reach the enemy, the zombies will still be at the front and all the other units will be right behind them. So it takes a bit of practice to figure out the distances, but always good to put your zombies way ahead of your other more important frontline infantry. Tries to get the Hex Race out of there, gets maybe a charge in there, but probably should have just tried to pull them out and get them out of there really, because they're all by themselves, basically facing an entire army potentially. The Blood Knights moving up on the right side, a fair bit ahead of the rest of the army. That is not what I meant to do. Let's come back down, fast forward a little bit. He's going to approach, the enemy's going to approach him, get off a volley, and then he's going to run back again for whatever reason. But his enemies maybe missed a good opportunity to use the land there. But in comes his Eagle attacking the Blood Knights, which is not a great choice by the Eagle because the Eagle is large and those Blood Knights are anti-large. He probably could have stayed on that, would have done some good damage. He did a little bit there already. The Eagle came off worse in that exchange than the Blood Knights did. His Hex Wraith still tied up over here. They're struggling. Going to get a bit of work done on those Illyrian Reavers, but would have been much better for them if they could have got out of there, maybe caught a heal to make up for their loss. The enemy's going to move back to the tree line though. His Blood Knights a little bit ahead of the pack here. Should have pulled these back. You need to be patient. If you get units up there first, it's mostly because they're faster, not because they should be there. He's lucky that all the archers didn't turn to face and start shooting at his Blood Knights because they are all by themselves. He should have pulled back. Just sit back here and wait because you've got to wait for your slow infantry to catch up and then you try to all attack together. If you attack like one unit at a time, you're just feeding them to the enemy army because Blood Knights, as strong as they are, they can't take on an entire army. So he's lucky that they didn't get absolutely pelted with missiles here, or Imric dropping a breath attack on him. A couple of units falling behind the Mortis Engine and Vlad and the Vargolf. So just a couple of issues with micro, which is, you know, quite normal for newer players. It's all good. Something you work on over time, but these cavalry's being a bit too far forward. It's very dangerous. Needs to pull back a bit. Just needs to be a little more patient with those. He comes around the back now, starts to launch his little flanking attack, which is a good call. Brings the Blood Knights around the back, goes after those missiles, which is what cavalry should be doing in this situation. When he's got 4 units of missiles, you need to disrupt them, stop them from firing. His enemy tried a chain lightning here, didn't really work too well. Dropped a comet there, which is a huge expensive spell, and he dropped it on zombies. So his enemy being a bit too overzealous with his magic, not really focusing on the dangerous targets. So that's good for Fishbox. A breath attack here, again it's on skeletons. Big waste of that breath attack for his opponent. Could have even dropped it on the Blood Knights right there. And those Blood Knights need to get out of there. They need to start hammering into other missiles, disrupting more and more and more. He also needs to spawn up some zombies. It's one of the best ways to disrupt missiles, and he's got Vlad to do it. His zombies on the front line here struggling against those white lions. Skeletons are all coming in to fight the spears. A few units back here not microed yet. I'm sure we'll get those in a minute. Of course, this is one of the trials of being new. You've got a lot to micro. It's very fast paced. It's not like campaign where you can slow things down or pause. You got to deal with everything all at the same time. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody in every battle makes micro mistakes from time to time, even the best players, so you don't have to worry about them too much. You just got to try to get those mistakes down to a minimum. Now, the Mortis Engine here, it's one unit in this battle he doesn't use very well because he doesn't make the most of its talents. If we look at what it does, it causes damage to nearby combatants when it's fighting in melee. So if you get it fighting enemies, it will damage them with a passive constant, basically the opposite of regen. It will reduce their health constantly while it's fighting. And at the same time, it will heal up nearby friendly units. So it's an absolutely wonderful piece of support kit that should be up on the front line with those Graveguard, healing them up and damaging the enemies. Now with his Blood Knights here, he made another big mistake by chasing this chariot. This chariot is way faster than those Blood Knights are. 84 speed, you're not going to catch it with the 70 speed Blood Knights. They're too slow, so don't even bother. He's taken a lot of damage from that. It's costing him nearly his Blood Knights. They should be over here hammering all these missiles. There's plenty of them for the taking, which I think he is going to start to do now. He's going to realize he's going to bring them back. Going to get after those missiles. His army is quite lacking in mobility, so he doesn't have a lot of choices here. His frontline Graveguard units have all been tied up. His opponent's doing a good job of keeping those important units out of the way while he deals with the crappy ones, but he's using a lot of expensive stuff, is his opponent, to take out the crappy units, when he should be using those breath attacks on the Graveguard and things, really. Blood Knights coming in, though. Good job to get rid of those, or to get on those at least. I'm sure they won't last too long. Another unit here to hit. And he's just missing a few key units that could be really useful. With all these archers around, if you had direwolves, if you had bats, those can really disrupt or just outright murder all of those archers. And that's what he's really missing. He's got mostly infantry, which is all very slow. You really need much more mobility in most armies of most factions, to be honest. This Mortis Engine, still sitting out of the fight, should be in there. This isn't a chariot. Don't be waiting for those opportunities as a chariot. Get it here. Look at this blob. This is perfect. This is absolute prime territory for a Mortis Engine. You'll put damage on those combatants by being just near the Mortis Engine when it's in melee, and you'll be healing up all of those Graveguard around it. So that is a gold mine for that Mortis Engine. Vlad, still in here throwing down, or at least he has been. He's chilling out right now. I'm not sure how much magic he's been using. I saw some zombies just now. I think he drops a heal around. See, these Blood Knights, they really need a heal. They really need an invocation. They should be back over here right now, next to this Vargolf. Drop an invocation, heal them all up. Graveguard there as well. You could heal all of those units up in one go. That's what you need to look for with that Vampire Lord and that healing. Invocation of Nehek is imperative to Vampire success. Use it as quickly as you can. When it comes off cooldown, use it. Try and get as many of those as you can. They only cost 6 magic, so it's really cheap. If you upgrade it, of course, it'll be more expensive. But here we go, using the Mortis Engine like a chariot. This isn't where it's going to do good work. It's chasing off these archers a bit, but there should be other units doing that. Wolves, bats, cavalry. Obviously, he doesn't have a couple of those, which is why, as I say, needs more mobility. Dropping a Curse of Years here on the enemy. Not the most useful spell in the world to me. Getting an invocation on these Graveguard, though, so he did drop an invocation, an upgraded one as well. A Curse of Years, mostly only useful for the melee attack debuff it puts on enemies, so it saves your boys a bit of damage, but honestly, you'd probably be better off just getting more invocations and more zombie spawns going on. But most of this battle, he's doing alright. He's getting rid of a lot of the infantry, he's routing a lot of stuff off, still using the Mortis Engine as a chariot. It should be alongside these Graveguard, healing them up and damaging all these White Lions. These are one of the biggest threats left on the battlefield. He could probably terror route a lot of these as well. That's the good thing about the Mortis Engine. It does have terror, so it can have a chariot type use to use that terror, but it should mostly be in melee. Near some allies as well, so it can heal them up. But he's doing alright at getting rid of the last few bits and bobs. Vlad's still going strong. Even without Blood Drinker, that extra regeneration. He's broken the caster over here, just about. So he's broken away a lot of the infantry. There's just some missiles left. The chariots going after the Mortis Engine. Chasing off all the archers. So he's done okay. Like I say, he's facing a newer opponent, so it's quite an even match between the two of them. But the other problem for him is he doesn't have a lot of anti-large, and with those dragons running around, or potential eagles, which were both in this fight actually, it can make life hard. He had the Blood Knights, but you probably really need a Terrorgeist as well. A little bit dangerous if it takes on the dragon, because that is a very strong dragon of Imric's. But yeah, you need something that can pursue and get after that big old dragon. Because now the big old dragon's going after Vlad, and there's not a lot Vlad can do about it, other than try to hit him back and try to do some damage. But Vlad has run out of regeneration now. He's on his last legs. But to be honest, this high elf build is probably like a vampire player's wet dream, really, because of all those missiles that aren't 360 firing. They can't run away and shoot at the same time. They have to stand still to fire. so easy to drop zombies on those and disrupt them. He had them all next to each other as well, so one unit of zombies could probably distract 2 units there. If you had bats and direwolves, you'd absolutely ruin those, and he wouldn't have much else. Vlad getting rid of the caster there at the end, but now Vlad's in trouble because old Imrik's on him. So it's come down, he's mostly defeated his enemy's army. But Vlad is left, the Mortis Engine's left, Vlad's in trouble because big old Imrik on that dragon is tough to take down, especially for the vampire counts who don't have great anti-large. And his enemy is just able to do this, just to run away and get out of there. And there's nothing he can do about it. Although I guess there is, because he's got rid of the rest of the units on the High Elf army. So now Imrik has to land because he's losing leadership. If he stays in the air, he's going to lose eventually. He's going after the big man now though. Vlad's in trouble. He's a crumbling. He's only got a little bit of health left. The Mortis Engine's coming in. Still got a good bit of health, that Mortis Engine. Give Vlad a little bit of regeneration help as well. But Imrik's a big tough dude and he's still got half his health. So Fishbox, a valiant effort. Very nearly won this. Came close. Just needed to be a little bit more careful with the cavalry. Needed to use the Mortis Engine to support his troops more than using it as a chariot. Of course, a little bit of micro to work on as well. And then probably the biggest thing is that his army didn't have enough mobility. It was a lot of infantry, only a couple of units of cav. The Vargolf as well. So just needed a bit more that could flank round and really harass the High Elves. How do we do though? Vlad doing pretty well. Skeletons, little bits and bobs. Graveguard doing okay though. Oh, the Great Weapon Graveguard doing well. Hexwraiths couldn't get anything. Blood Knights not really getting their worth. Vargolf not getting its worth. But the Mortis Engine doing okay. Not too shabby at all. So some fair work from a lot of his units. Did well. Did break off most of the enemy. Whoa, 5,000 from Imrik. Nearly took out half of that army by himself. And he didn't even use his breath attacks very well. He easily could have got half the army there. Bit of work from the White Lions. Fairly spread out damage for the enemy. Got a bit of work out his missiles and cav. So yeah, really needed something there to combat Imrik, and really a Terrorgeist or a Zombie Dragon Lord is probably the only answer, but let's take a look at his build and see what we could have changed there. So this is Fishbox's build. As I said, there's a lot of units going on here. We kind of got 2 of everything almost. We've got 2 skeletons, 2 skeleton spears, 2 graveguard, 1 grave weapons, and a few different kinds of cav and monsters and things, so this can be difficult for a newer player. You're giving yourself a lot to micro. It's okay to only have an army of 3 or 4 different units. You don't need kind of 6, 7, 8. You can keep it simple. Let's have a look at Vlad though. So he's got all the abilities, which is fine. These are pretty much all useful in all of the matchups. Maybe Master of Beguilement is a little bit of an optional one. It does help with the safety of Vlad because it can stop him from taking damage if the big target comes after him. But in this case, it's probably useful as he's all alone. Curse of Years, Raised Dead, and Invocation. All you really need here is Invocation and Raised Dead. Don't even bother with the rest. If you're new and you find magic a lot to deal with, just take those 2. Curse of Years is not really needed. Better off spending the magic on heals or more zombies, I would say. Don't feel the need to take more spells than you can really handle. 1 or 2 spells can do just fine. You can do plenty with that. As long as you know what you're doing with it and you use it well, it's magic well spent. For the items, as I mentioned, he was missing Blood Drinker, which is one of Vlad's best items. 8 health per second. That's pretty huge heals. So always good to take that one. Gives him that super fast regeneration. Helps keep him alive. We could have actually replaced Curse of Years with that and still been in the cost. So that definitely would have been the play to make. Could take the Cast Iron Ring if you really wanted that extra damage resistance. Could help keep him safe. A good one if you think Vlad might get gooned on. A couple of zombies. Always good. Nice and cheap. But here we've got all the different kinds of skeletons. Really, you probably just want to take one. Again, for the simplicity and to help your micro to not give you so much to think about. And as he had the 2 units of Graveguard here, you've got the anti-infantry in those, so we don't really need these crappy skeletons. You could replace those with anti-large skeletons. Obviously, there's Cav, you've got the Dragon. These aren't the best anti-large unit in the world, but they're better than nothing. So keep those. Graveguard with great weapons, we could hold on to those. They could be useful if there's some Sword Masters or something tougher. We can use those to good effect. Hexwraiths, another good pick if you can use them well. They got that Vanguard deployment. He got a little bit unlucky with that, of course, deploying next to 2 units of Illyrian Reavers. Blood Knights, pretty much an essential unit for the vampire counts, one of their few anti-large units and very good at the job. The Vargolf, probably a bit of a risky pick here because it has such low armor and there's a lot of missiles often in the High Elves army. So if you bring this with only its 40 armor, it's likely it's going to get focused and shot down. And the same problem with the Mortis Engine. While it can be very powerful, it's only got 40 armor and is a big target. If he'd focused all 4 of his missile units on that early, if it was enraged, it would have melted pretty quick, especially if he threw fire into the equation. But as we have these Graveguard here, these are kind of our frontline units, so we don't really need all of this infantry. We could probably just lose all of these skeleton spears. But what I'd probably prefer is to just have those 2 units of Graveguard and maybe throw the Sternsmen in there. These are regenerating Graveguard basically. So a nice tough front line in that. for the vampire counts anyway, and then just some zombies in front of them to absorb stuff, and that'll do. We don't really need the crappy skeletons. We can then save the money and put it elsewhere. We're going to hold on to the Graveguard with great weapons. We maybe could switch those out for Cairn Wraiths instead with their terror. That could be useful. But this Mortis Engine and the Vargolf can be risky picks because of all the missiles. Like I say, not a lot of armor. Could be fire damage, which will tear those two a new one. So that's quite risky. If you're going to bring the Mortis Engine, you really need to build around it to keep it alive, which will probably mean bringing a bunch of bats, maybe some direwolves, all for harassing missiles and stopping it from getting shot, because that's what it's weak to. If you can keep it alive and keep it safe, keep it working with that Graveguard frontline, and it could do some work. We could probably get one extra unit of bats. There we go, maybe something like that. So we're building around that Mortis Engine, all about keeping it safe though. If we can't keep it safe from missiles, it's probably going to get taken out. Fire is very dangerous to these regenerating units, so we've got to protect it. You can then have your Graveguard, hold everything in place, get that cavalry around the back to assault them with some hammer and anvil. Maybe that could work. Maybe that could be a little plan that could work against the High Elves here. But I still feel like that's kind of lacking in mobility. There's not enough fast-moving units that can get around quickly. So we're going to get rid of the Mortis Engine. We can lose some of the bats and direwolves. Always good to have those against those missile-heavy factions. A Terrorgeist, though, always a good pick for the Vampire Counts. It's one of their best anti-large units. It could have taken on Imric. It could have gone after the Chariots, maybe. Could get into Cav. So it's quite a versatile unit. Doesn't have the best armor or the best leadership, but it still can put up some anti-large power. Again, it might need some protection if there's missiles around. The Cav will have to do that. So another option there. This army might look a little bit crazy though. There's a lot of units going on. Might be a lot to micro. So perhaps we can really simplify things down. Let's try that. How simple can we make this army still being effective? So we can keep the zombies. We can go just a few extra units of Graveguard. So there's your little front line. Nice and simple. All the same unit. Don't need to think about the matchup too much. Just get it into a good one and you're fine. 2 units of Blood Knights. We know what they can do. A Terrorgeist as well. There's lots of anti-large. Good for those dragons. Good for those dragon princes. Maybe the eagles. What else do we need here? Maybe a little more Cav. Missiles could be a problem. Some Black Knights, Lance and Barding. Could be good Cav for pushing after missiles or hammer and anviling the back of whatever the Graveguard is fighting. So some options with that. Might need to save a little bit of money in places. Can't quite get it cheap enough here. Maybe we could lose Master of Beguilement. Still need a little bit more. Could maybe lose a unit of Zombos. There we go. So we could run with that. It's quite a simple army. Flank around, get after the missiles, let the front line engage, try and hammer and anvil, and use the anti-large units to try and kill anything large. Simple, effective, get the healing on whatever needs it. The Blood Knights, the Terrorgeists. We could bring some Hex Wraiths instead. Maybe go for that. We got 900 left. We could still bring some other stuff. Going hefty on the flanking with this. But this, of course, relies on the High Elves having a lot of missiles. If they got a lot of infantry, well, we can still go after them. Bring in some Cairn Wraiths here, some armor-piercing damage. If they got some Swordmasters or something, we could go for that. So just another possibility, another way to try, another plan of attack. But what about if we go super cheap on the front line? We'll bring the zombies and just some skeletons. They're just going to try and hold everything in place. We're not bringing the fancy Graveguard now. This saves us a lot of money. So we can put that elsewhere. Tidy things up a bit here. There we go. Now we got 1,600 spare. We've got a lot of extra money. What could we do with that? Put our Cairn Wraiths up there. So now we got a little bit more room. We could maybe get some extra flyers. We could try and get that Terrorgeist. We might have to lose a few things though. We could maybe go for some Vargeists. Maybe the Devils of Schwarzhafen. They can be a pretty dangerous unit. We can get some nice flanking with those. They can chase missiles. They can hit enemy infantry from behind. Bit of hammer and anvil. Good old flying hammer and anvil. So you see just a lot of mobility. A lot of stuff that can move around quickly and adjust where it needs to. The skeletons and the zombies just going to hold everything down. And all this stuff is just going to harass and try to get behind, hammer and anvil, and do all of the work. The skeletons aren't winning the battle for us, but they can pin things in place, setting up the rest of our army. We could do something like that. Just loads of zombies, pin them all down with the cheap crappy stuff, hit them hard from the back with the Cav. We got 4 units of Cav there, the Vargeist, the Terrorgeist as well, some bats. There's just so much that we can move around quickly and absolutely overrun the enemy with. Get the heals on the important stuff, the Blood Knights, the Terrorgeist, maybe the Vargeists, and that could work. But there we go. There's a bunch of ideas. I've rambled on far too long about the Vampire Counts and all the possible builds. But there you go. There's some options that you could use. It's very often very much the same. You could change the Lord out here and bring something a little more mobile. You could bring the Dragon Lord, but Vampire Counts all about bringing infantry to hold stuff in place while all the monsters and Cav do the work. Get your zombie spawns in. Get your invocations of Nehekon. GG. That's all you need. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. See you in the future.